Anyways, welcome everyone to our monthly cannabis committee, cannabis advisory committee meeting. Hang on here, get my notes and figure out where the heck we're at. So I think you all know the routine by now that allows us to do this with the grace of the state. It's still allowing us to conduct meetings by way of Zoom. I think you're all familiar with the criteria of it, unless someone needs me to repeat that back. Everything's done by roll call vote, which I know you're all aware of at this point. Raising hands is always a good thing so that we can begin to identify the speaker. Realize that anyone who wishes can certainly call this meeting back up. So the moral of the story always is, and not to say that you're not, be on your best behavior with things because everything is recorded, and anyone who wishes can take a look at that at any point. So that's why it's kind of important too. Above and beyond that, we're going to get started at this point. Everything, like I said, is done by roll call vote because we are on Zoom, and that's a mandate behind that. You have an agenda before you at the moment. Oh, by the way, I can tell you, Chuck Samicki did email me and say he said he wouldn't be here. And we were, just loosely discussing our other two members of the committee, which we're going to have to kind of work on a little bit here. So anyways, I see. Anyways, so let me start with motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
And second, Joe?
Yes.
Yep, no problem. So Abby? To approve the agenda?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well, too. We don't have any draft minutes at this point. And I'm sorry, I should also do the roll call as well, too. So let me just say who's here at the moment. Joe Plandowski,
Here.
Abby D. Molina,
Here.
Don Hill Holgate,
Here.
Barry Richter is the chair. I think I better be here. And then we have two guests out there as well, too, is Dan Berger and also Nicole Campbell. So
Hello there.
Hi. So please feel free to kind of let me know if you want to chime in. We love hearing from you both, especially since you have your pulse on the industry there as well, too. If there's no public comment, I was hoping Jacques would be here because I just really want to get this election of officers done with at this point. So if you're good, we'll just keep moving along unless anyone, I don't know. We good for now?
Good.
All right, good. So anyways, that's going to bring us to a few different things. I had put a placeholder in here, which is item number 7, citizens warrant articles for the upcoming town meeting. There is no citizens warrant articles hanging out there that appertain to cannabis in any way, shape, or form. Although there are like 28 citizens petitions that are out there. I just got the list, and that should be disseminated shortly.
There's 29.
What's that?
I guess there's 29 actually articles.
Was it 29? Okay, I
Nothing with cannabis though, like you said.
No, I didn't know what to expect at this point, so that's why I put a placeholder in for it. But there's a real good potential here to be submitting some town warrant articles. And I know Dawn's got some perspectives from the select board, and I've got some things that I want to talk to you about from the planning perspective that are all going to dovetail in together. Do you want to start first, Dawn, or do you want me to go first with this?
No, you go ahead.
All right, no problem. So really the two chapters in our bylaws that are going to be affected by any changes we do sit with chapter 95, which is the code itself that drives a lot of the cannabis things that we talk about, and is the foundation of what most of the cannabis things are based on. And then there's chapter 139, which is the zoning code, which has its own separate things that look at cannabis as well too. So just keep in mind that we're really in two different sections, and one can affect the other. I will tell you at this point, I did have a talk with Leslie Woodson Snell, who is the now director of Plus Services and Planning. And so a few things came out of this, in terms of where I would like to head to from a planning perspective, that I think are going to be important for us, especially as the industry begins to change and grow. One thing, which is more of a technical amendment, is to clean up all of the verbiage that refers to marijuana. Time for that to go, as far as I'm concerned. Everything will need to be converted over to cannabis. And I'm gonna, when we deal with the town, I'm gonna ask for the same changes to be made as well too. And that way, the language is far more uniform and reflects well for what the Cannabis Control Commission is doing at this point. And I won't elaborate any further about the marijuana thing, but it's time for that change to happen in both those. And those can be done as technical changes without really affecting much of anything. There's only one zoning definition that I desperately want to have changed, and maybe that's just the anal retentive pharmacist in me wanting to do it. But one of them is labeled adult on-site marijuana social consumption operator. So if you go looking for either cannabis or marijuana, this one is the outlier. It sits in the A section of our zoning code because it starts as adult on-site. So I just want to get that cleaned up as well too, so that it still has the same intent behind it, but everything falls alphabetically within that same section. Let's move on to some of the more substantive changes that need to take place. The other thing that I wanted to chat with Leslie about, based upon previous conversations I've had with a few of you privately, is to look at the permissible zoning districts that are out there as well too. Right now, this is limited to 2 zoning districts at the moment. But there are far more commercial districts that really should now be included at this point. So anything that in our zoning code that starts with a C, which would be things like CMI Mid-Island area, the CTEC, CN, which is neighborhoods, CI industrial. There's also village, neighborhood, and village tech as well too. All those allow for commercial zoning to take place. So I'm going to encourage the planning board to expand the zoning districts to those. The other thing I'm going to ask right at that same point is that the use chart for any cannabis things, even in those areas, everything will be special permit. So that when a special permit is triggered for that, the review is far more comprehensive than it would be by just doing it allowed by right use in an area. So I think, if people are concerned about moving into those zones, by doing it by special permit will make a big difference and satisfy a lot of people who may be sitting on the edge or just against wanting to do this at all. I'm going to stop there for a second if you have any questions. No. All right. And certainly if you do later on, you know where to find me at this point. What else do I want to talk to you about? So, everything special permit. Some of the language in here about recreational marijuana establishment, it's probably time to change a few things as well too. And again, I want you to be aware of the fact too that if I've talked with Leslie about this. She seems generally that these are issues that should be brought before the entire board for discussion and then get onto the warrant by virtue of the planning board submitting things. That gives us a lot more time under which to do it. Somewhere in about January, time will go by fast. But the planning board would, when they do this, require a public hearing to take place as well too, so it can be vetted out there. What else do I want to get into here? I'm sorry, I've got some notes still all over the place at the moment. There may be an opportunity to look at the community host agreement. I think the town may still be very much in favor of that. I could be wrong. But we're probably reaching a stage 2 with the changes in the industry where we may want to put in verbiage to allow the town to completely waive that host community agreement. I don't have a good feel for this yet, and maybe Dawn may be able to contribute some more information on it. I still haven't had a chance to really chat with Libby about this. What else was in there? The use of on-site consumption of marijuana is another key part of this. There's a few things going on right now, which I'm going to be a little unclear about. Let me stop for a second, Joe.
You said the HCA would be wavered.
It could be wavered. It would now be so the verbiage includes the ability for the town to waive the community host agreement in its entirety.
How
And
does that fit with the state folks that want to review all these HCAs?
well, on the other side of the coin, the state also said too, they would probably also allow the HCAs to be wavered. And in doing so, what it does, it removes a lot of the regulatory things that they've put in place. There's a fairly hefty load of things you have to do now.
I got the paper. I'm reading this stuff.
Yeah, I am sure you do. So by waiving it, what it does is allows the town to get out of that quagmire of doing things. So I mean, for the town, there's pros and cons to either side of that. By adopting it, you're adopting whatever else the cannabis control industry, Cannabis Control Commission wants to do. By waiving it, it basically opens you up to a lot less exposure to things and a lot less in terms of requirements that the town would have to do as well. So I can't answer that because, I mean, as a member of this committee, I see the value in it, but really that final decision would have to go before the select board and then ultimately the FinCom and then ultimately before town meeting as well too. But I still don't have a good feel for that position yet with town administration. Other things that we were looking at too, there's a requirement for a 500-foot separation between recreational marijuana establishments and schools and daycare centers. There might be an opportunity to change that verbiage just a bit because they use it being measured off of lot lines right now. There's an opportunity that could be changed from I think from the nearest part of the building to where the school or whatever lies. So if there's like a 40-foot setback or even bigger, that setback gets reduced all of a sudden and allows an easier location to something. The other thing was talking about on-site consumption of marijuana products right now is expressly prohibited. That verbiage may need to be changed, and I'm probably going to advocate it be changed for the future to start looking at except for social consumption. Maybe we don't, and again, Dan's going to have a whole different perspective on this because things are marching along at the state. And I don't know, Nicole, you may have a feel on this as well too. Looks like the state is trying to create a loophole that would make it permissible to be able to do on-site consumption if it were passed on the ballot of a town or a city. Anyways, the shorter cut to this may be to do this by just allowing social consumption in our own internal zoning definitions. There's also a reference in here too to delivery of cannabis control products, again, is prohibited. And I think that's time for that to be struck as well. I'm going to stop there for a moment and see if you have any comments, suggestions, thoughts. That's a lot to digest. Anyone have any thoughts on any of those?
I mean, my
ahead.
understanding with the host community agreements is that we may need to, if nothing else, alter them or maybe rescind them entirely.
Yep, that those are all on the table, and I mean that you're one of the 5 select board, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here at this point, but I think I've heard that you've been having a few conversations about what is gonna maybe be coming up at town meeting, which I'm still a little fuzzy at the moment about what's gonna happen. That's why it would be helpful to turn to you and just maybe get some perspectives from you, Dawn. And then maybe you can advise me as well too, whether things are just going to feel like they're moving ahead on their own, or whether it's worth my sitting down with Libby and just getting the absolute read on things. So, but on the prior stuff, some of that can be handled through the planning board without too much of an issue. And with the things I've brought up, I don't know how much time we've got available, but I want to flesh out from you all now if there's any problem areas with any of the things I've brought up. If you're generally pretty genuinely confident with that, then I'd kind of like a little bit of a go to push this further with the planning board and get things formalized. So question 1, anything you want to talk about? Go ahead, Joe.
Yes, in reviewing the materials that were sent under the category of municipal equity, it's interesting. It says authorizing licensees to submit a plan to positively impact disproportionate harm people to the commission by donating to the Cannabis Social Equity Trust Fund. Now, I thought what we said is there's not going to be anything in the new HCA agreement that says you've got to do this or that relative to money or services. This is saying, licensee, guess what? You got to put money into the fund.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't seem right.
First of all, welcome to the Cannabis Control Commission and their infinite wisdom in terms of doing things. Dan, you've been tracking this pretty closely. So if you're all good here, I'd like to hear from him for a minute, please. And Nicole, if you have anything you want to add to, just please let me know.
And I appreciate it through the chair, and I appreciate the platform as always. But on the ability to satisfy your positive impact plan by donating to the Social Equity Trust Fund, it is not a requirement. That's just something that municipalities can, and it's codified that they can do that. And the positive impact plan is actually a separate part of licensing that you have to submit as part of your provisional and final license anyway. And they're saying as a way to meet the criteria of supporting communities that have been disproportionately harmed, you can, as part of your positive impact plan, make a direct contribution to the Social Equity Trust Fund.
What I would say is Massachusetts, Nantucket is not disproportionately impacted. Based on what I just looked up a day or so ago, the map does not show Nantucket as being in that category. That should say the licensees in Nantucket aren't tied to that contribution issue.
So if I may, again, through the chair.
Yep, go ahead.
So if you look at the criteria to be eligible for the social equity program, you don't necessarily have to be from an area of disproportionate impact. So this, on the Nantucket side of things too, I would point folks on the committee to look at the most recent equity study that was done. It was a few years ago now, but Nantucket, it actually per capita, it would be one of the higher communities as far as arrest rates go for cannabis. It was boxed out of the new study because it's a high tourist area. But you might find that a lot of members in the community actually might be eligible for the social equity program due to certain arrests or certain records, but not just them, but also their parents as well. So, and that's where there are certain communities from this first study that was done 5+ years ago now, where, in North Adams, Massachusetts, where I have spent quite a bit of time, actually, that's one of those areas of disproportionate impact. But right now, and I don't know if it's a priority for the commission, but they are looking at that again. But, we might find more folks on the island who are eligible for this than we might think.
Nicole, did I know you monitor these things closely too, and if you want to, I'm not trying to force you to chime in. I just
No, I'm glad
want to
to.
give you the opportunity if you have any thoughts here.
Yeah, this is one of the things that have always annoyed me and what Joe pointed out so correctly. But I think there's so many different social equity and charitable things and so forth that I think we're getting them a little bit mixed up. Basically, you have to come up with a plan to help individuals every year. And Nantucket does not qualify, as Joe said. Not that, in my opinion, there's lots of people on Nantucket that could use help. And we've done a lot of charitable work over the years, giving to all sorts of different charities on the island to help support the island. But in the eyes of the CCC, it doesn't count because they're very specific about the zip codes that you come from, and very, very detail specific. So we've also had to give a $2,500 donation every year to the Greater Boston Legal Fund. And so that money goes to people in their very specific zip codes and areas to help them with prior marijuana convictions and arrests. So it would be a great thing if they would allow more of that charity money to go directly to the community that you're in and not to other communities that aren't, that are not on the island or not part of the island. But that's just the way they have their laws set up at the moment.
Thank you. Go ahead, Joe.
I have another one. Actually, I have two, but this next one says requiring that host communities with saturated licensing caps reserve for equity businesses at least one, and as many as 50% of the expanded license opportunities. Now, Nantucket has a cap of 2. When I read this, is this saying there may be a cap of 2, but you also need an equity participant, so you're going to have 3?
Yes. That's basically what it's saying at this point. And so, that's gonna
I just find that difficult to understand, but let me raise the other issue.
Yep.
This is on suitability. Eliminating previously existing disqualifiers that prevent individuals with certain criminal backgrounds from employment in the legal industry. It doesn't define what certain criminal background is. Have you heard what that might be? Is it a parking violation or is it a murder violation?
I haven't heard at this point. I think this is part of the bone of contention that will sit with most of the municipalities that are railing against what the Cannabis Control Commission did. I'd probably say if people wanted to test the waters with this about how far you can run, they may start turning to what others, and you've supplied a lot of information on this. They may start turning to what other states have done in terms of what that record begins to look like. Somehow, I think the intent here, and again, not having it right in front of me, would be that anyone who has a previous record that may be tied to drug abuse, previous arrest records for that, maybe exactly what they're trying to change at this point. So that, if you remember, New York actually wanted you to go out and commit crimes and then go apply.
Yes, that's right. If you wanted to get on the
so
select
it's
list, you had to do that. You had to be
right,
arrested.
absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
missed that
So
in my lifetime. I should have been arrested. I could be high on that priority list.
it's never too late, and give me a call.
Call your attorney if you
That's
got that problem.
I'd probably say that that's social equity that they're shooting for here, that you really shouldn't be denying people, especially if they were arrested for marijuana or something, and they have that as part of their record. Now that it's legalized in the state, it's kind of a little bit of a tougher pitch to say, well, you shouldn't get it because of a past history that now has been absolved. So I don't know. I that would certainly be something that town council would be well paid for in terms of dealing with that process as well. One thing I do want to assure you that as we begin to move through this process too, we are going to have to wind up consulting town council on a lot of this stuff, because especially with the new regs put in place and stuff, not everyone is quite comfortable with the interpretation of it. And that seems, and we're going to get to that in a few minutes. But therein, again, it's all about how you look at what's in place and how the town is going to try to apply that to what's going on.
I'm going to
So
be
just,
very interested in how social equity is going to get handled on this island.
yeah, I would probably say to you, I understand, given the economic climes of the island and stuff. I'm not going to say it's 100% though. I wouldn't. I would think someone out there may figure out how to tap into that in some way, shape, or form. So I wouldn't be so quick to say never, never, never at this point out here. Of course, they, like anything, they're going to have to wind up making the case for it as well. So if there's nothing else, let me move along a bit. Is there anything else at the moment? All right, Don, I'm going to put the spotlight on you for a few minutes, if you don't mind. And just kind of see what's been going on the select board level.
I mean, we really haven't had this before the whole board and quite
Okay.
a time. I mean, I've had a few conversations with Libby just about changing legislation, but I think it's time for us to tee up
Okay.
kind of some discussion points for the select board.
Not. No, I agree with you, and that's if she seems amenable to it, I think it would. You can help me to figure out how to proceed with that, but I would
Okay.
like to be at the table for that discussion.
Well, maybe you and I can meet with Libby and
That'd be great.
figure out what our talking points would be.
Yeah, I think, or again, I'm just trying to get the pulse of what town administration wants to do with the changes that have taken place.
Yeah.
And certainly on one issue that, Libby's been really clear about where we're heading to with it, and I'll talk about that in a minute or three. Okay, I really wasn't sure about.
We need we need our person with town council on the
I agree.
legalities.
I definitely agree with that, and whether town council is part of that roundtable, or whether it's we kind of begin to figure out what we all want to do and then proceed it to town council.
Right.
you know, we'll begin to figure that out. Yeah, no, let me know how to facilitate that with you. And I'm happy to do that. But that helps a little bit because I was getting a little fuzzy about what was going on the select board level. But then again, too, I'll openly admit that the past few weeks have been just sheer craziness. And so I really haven't had much time to focus. As soon as one thing's done, two more things are there. And
Right.
this has been on my punch list to do.
I think Joe has a question.
I can tell.
Okay.
I got him. Don't worry, but thank you. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of my concerns is in terms of the social consumption sites,
Yep.
that somehow or other we don't allow it on Main Street. I mean,
Okay.
I just have a real problem with that one.
So let me go back to the zoning things I brought up a few minutes ago, because
Yes,
that's what's going to dictate where it can and can't go.
I know, but Main Street is a C designation.
It's actually, I think it's still ROH, which is the old historic district, if memory serves me correct. I'd have to look at the
Isn't
zoning
it
chart.
commercial downtown?
Might
That's
be,
what I thought.
yeah, but yeah, you're right. I think it may be commercial downtown, but that's not, that was not one of the things I put in here. Oh, no, the downtown core area, not yet. Not
Good.
yet. On the other side of the coin, I think with some of the other commercial areas that things are permissible in, for instance, I could easily see something going on in the old South Road corridor,
Yes.
running out to the
Like
airport,
Amelia Drive, which has
like Amelia Drive. And I will tell you from a planning board perspective, I'm seeing that neighborhood starting to slowly build now. So some of
Gary,
those streets that you're seeing that are
Sparks
looking very
Ave.
big. Go ahead.
What about the new Sparks Ave?
Oh, the new Sparks Ave. Well, that's where Leslie and I were kind of batting around a little bit. The CMI, which is Commercial Mid Island, and I think it will really depend upon what the boundary areas are for it. And again, this will have to pass through the planning board. It'll have to pass through the FinCom. They may have a very different take on what that looks like. But I'd want to, and Leslie flagged that and said that may be a problem area, and I won't disagree with her. But the question becomes, like, I think Kitty's is in the CMI, and that's
Well,
just sitting,
you might be able to solve
so
that. Yeah, but Barry, you might be able to solve that one, at least that Sparks Ave, if it has to be a certain distance from the schools, like you could make that
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of designation. And then that might avoid that issue over there, because I would agree. Because I think when we talked about it, we'd like it to be accessible through public transportation, things like that. But obviously, I think everyone would be agreement that you wouldn't want it close to the school. So that
Right.
might be a way to get around that for that specific development, if you will.
Yep. And realize that one of the other things that would be before the board at this point is that all of these would require a special permit. And
Mhm.
that I think no matter where it goes, that's where everything starts to shake itself loose.
Yeah,
You know, if you said, all right, well, let's think about the Mid-Island, new downtown.
Yeah.
And you've got 150 people showing up all saying, what are you thinking? I think that would definitely carry some weight in the final decision about either allowing or denying the special permit for it. So this is kind of I'm probably going to say what you already know at this point. This is kind of an interesting time right now because we're about 5 years out from when the first permits started to get out there, and the state was like, okay, we're good with moving this ahead. But having sat on this thing since day one, when this all started, it was like the Wild West. No one knew what was going to happen, how it was going to shake itself out, where it was going to go, what were the social ramifications behind it. How many people are going to be out in the street just smoking cannabis? There was just this wealth of, either people were all fine with it, it's time to move ahead, and then there was still a number of people out there with all of their fears and concerns about it. So everyone kind of tried to opt into let's just take it very slow and gentle and see where it goes. Here we are 5 years out now. You've seen the Cannabis Control Commission start making changes, and as I think we've loosely talked about, in terms of things, this is, I think, from where we are today, and again in another 5 years, this is going to look more like the alcohol industry that's out there, with package stores and stuff. So it's still got some time to go, but I think 5 years has made people a little bit more with the attitude of it's socially permissible to do it. And that's my 2 cents. Good, Joe.
One of the concerns that I have is, I think about a week ago, I turned out a bunch of earnings for the commercial cannabis companies. I mean, nobody made any money. I have the next list ready to go. I'm
Yeah.
waiting for a few more to come in, but it is terrible. And you got to wonder, where is this all headed?
What would be funny to look at is when prohibition got lifted, and then watch how that industry tracked for 10 years. Because I got a real sneaking suspicion when prohibition was lifted and alcohol became permissible, everyone, and all the illegal gin joints, all the other things were like, oh wow, here we go, heyday. And I could be wrong. I think there would have been an industry explosion at this point, and then by virtue of just sheer economics, everything probably started to collapse back down afterwards. And I think that's what we saw here. Everyone and their mother thought they could open a cannabis industry. And then all of a sudden, the reality over time has been you can only saturate the market so much. And what happens is, I think, is where we are today, where you see the market starting to collapse back in on itself. Because in certain towns I've been to, there's 2 or 3 cannabis things just so close to each other, just within a few short miles of each other. And you got to question to yourself, how are they all thriving and surviving in that? Because right now, it's not a cheap industry to be into either, given the restrictions that are put onto it as well. I don't know, time will tell, but I think that is, whoever gets into the industry at this point, these are the issues that they're going to have to grapple with, in terms of doing things.
Yeah, the competition is fierce, and the pricing keeps going down, which makes it tough on earnings. There's got to be a lot of consolidation, I would think, that's going to be taking place. I just can't see all those people out there losing all that money. We shall see. But you were around during Prohibition, weren't you?
Who, me? You're a funny man. No, that I as well as I'm just bringing that up as a parallel.
Yes.
It would be interesting to look at, though.
I may just do that.
Yeah, I don't doubt that, actually. You love to investigate, and I love when you do, because you bring forward some very good and salient information with things. All right. So let's move ahead here at this point. I don't know if we want to have a discussion about the changes that were implemented by the Cannabis Control Commission to the main body that deals with that, which is 935 CMR 500. You've seen it. You've all had a chance to read it. I want to make sure that you are aware of it, because there are some pretty broad sweeping changes, but this is just more, unless you feel like you've got anything you want to contribute, add to it, or is a red flag, this is the time to do it. Otherwise, I think we're still going to I still don't think we're done yet. I think you're going to see one more set of revisions take place. Because I do know that there's still a want from a lot of the towns and cities to push back on this. Um, that's my looking in the crystal ball at this point. But is there anything you want to discuss on that, or are you pretty content with the information that was put forward, that was put before you that I sent out?
I like the HCA waiver. I did not know that from reading everything that I read.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, I probably just say again, a lot of towns and cities really liked the HCA because all right, so I'm on Zoom and I'm probably going to get crucified for this, but it was kind of a cash cow for the towns and cities. And some of them,
Yes.
again, and sadly, some of them took it so far overboard that this is, I think, why the Cannabis Control Commission started to dial it back down at this point. So I think they put some incentives in place to say to the towns and cities, not only are we going to regulate it, and you've got to be better about how you're tracking that and where it's going to, and we're going to be watching that. Because I'll guarantee some of those funds that the towns and cities were receiving pretty much shrunk in a big way. And this now, I think, was put in by the commission to just give them a method to completely opt out and not look back. And here you go again. That's my commentary. Anyone else want to say anything at the moment on that? Nope. If I'm wrong, don't be afraid to correct me. I'm good with it.
I think you're right. I think you're right, Barry.
So really there's only one other thing I want to bring up to you. And then I just want to circle back in for a minute. On the social equity policy that was that we drafted for the town. Town council had a few questions about it, and both town council and town administration are feeling like that the last shot has not been fired across the bow yet. So for the moment, they want to throttle, they just want to put it in place to hold, and that was a bad choice of terms. They want to just hold it aside now so that they can make final revisions when they feel everything is dialed in place by the Cannabis Control Commission, and then do the implementation from there. So I know that Libby was appreciative of the fact that we sent that out from our committee, just even as a baseline, if nothing else. So thank you all for contributing to that. And they definitely acknowledged our that they were pleased with the product that we turned out. But we'll see where it takes off to. So anyways, I guess maybe I'm just repeating myself here, but in terms of some of the things we've talked about that could potentially come before the next town meeting, are we kind of on track? Did you all freeze? No, there we go. All right.
Everything
You're
froze.
back now.
Yeah, sorry, the internet did, like I said, the internet is a little unstable at the moment. I'm so sorry.
I did
Where
not
did
hear what you said. You said
where
you
did
were
I
starting and then you went silent.
Yeah, I bet I did, and I'm sure people were like, thank God it's about time. Um, so my question for you, you got the final thing on the social equity policy, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure where I left off at with you. So I'm just going to circle back one more time. Do you think the things that we have talked about today are worthy enough to begin to advance in that we're going to do in the planning board will come back before the public in a bigger way? But I just want to hear from each of you to think if we're kind of on track based upon our conversations, or if you don't want to do it, I get that as well too, or are there red flags that are coming up that we should be avoiding? Abby, what do you think?
Red flag.
Yeah, and red flags or I'm just kind of looking for a thumbs up, thumbs down, or oh my God, what are we thinking?
I mean, I think overall I give thumbs up. I think like in terms of red flags, just a lot of the things that I think Joe's kind of brought up, like I'm worried about, like we want to ensure it's viable, because like Joe, it's like we don't want to do all this work and then have it be kind of like a really unrealistic concept, right?
Right.
And so I think we want to make sure that we have the right balance between, you know, like providing that commercial business opportunity, but then not making it so restrictive that like it chokeholds and kind of dooms it to fail, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, Dan, we've talked about the same thing. Like, I think, so I want to make sure that we are, like, I understand there are concerns, but we also are in the end, like encouraging it to be the safest, best opportunity, but that it will be able to survive. You know what I mean? Because I would hate for us to go through a lot of work and effort, but then, and I think obviously anyone who's been involved with the town, we've seen that in some instances when you make it too restrictive, that then it kind of like dooms everything to fail. And then you make everyone feel like it was a big waste of their time not to be, you know what I mean? Like, so I guess I just want to make sure we have the right balance. That makes sense?
Okay.
I see Dan nodding.
Sorry, I cut out for a minute where my Zoom froze up, so I probably missed the
Yeah.
most substantive part of that comment. But as from what I'm tracking, it's ensuring success of any, you know, any changes that we're bringing before to town meeting. It's one of the reasons that, you know, after sleeping on things after our meeting, but also I bounced out, and that's where it was nice to meet Dawn finally in person at the last week's select board meeting or pre-town meeting. But anyway, yeah, one of the reasons that, you know, I decided to not circulate those was so that we could get this in front of all parties involved, make sure that everyone has their input, but also ensure the success of whatever establishment gets this license or these future licenses, and make it, you know, yeah, make sense for the island. And I appreciate the discussion I got to see, and I'm sorry I cut out for a minute there, but yeah, you know, that's one of the reasons I brought everything back to you all, and I'm happy to see, you know, what we bring forward. If it's not next town meeting and annual town meeting 25, it's still 25 on the agenda. So I think again, Barry, there's some wisdom there, because and you know, I'll just put this out there. When I was out on island, I was able to drop off the social consumption petitions. So those are on the island and they're ready to go. And yeah, sorry, lost my train of thought there. Please, yeah, get me back on track. I'll yield my time.
There we go. Joe, what do you think?
Well, I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence from this standpoint. There are 2 dispensaries on the island today.
Mm-hmm.
The town actually has created a monopoly by doing that, by limiting it to 2 dispensaries.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more for, I don't care how many dispensaries there are, but on the other hand, if there were 3 more dispensaries on top of the 2, there'd be none very shortly. So it's when I say on the fence, I mean on the fence.
Got it. Is that more based upon the economics again, or?
Yes, it's based on the economics. Now,
Yeah.
in terms of what should happen with any suggestions, I would say the voters ought to have an opportunity to chime in.
I that's where it's going to head to.
Yeah, which is the right way to do it.
Yeah.
The only thing you got to do is you got to think about the voters. Unless it's an island-wide voting arrangement, going to the town meeting with 10% of the voters there and a bunch of what I would say a majority of people there are old and conservative could be an uphill battle.
I understand that.
That is a great point, Joe, that town meeting is not necessarily the most open forum for this.
Mhm.
That's for sure.
I agree, especially, it was very funny. I had to do some analytics on one of the articles from a town meeting not too long ago. And when I realized the voting members that were there, they were representing just about 4% of the entire community. And then you have to ask yourself, what are the optics behind that? What does it mean, and what's really going on? It doesn't take much for one special interest group to turn things over.
As we saw just a
Yes.
week or two ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm hoping that our requirement would be to go to town meeting. I don't think there's a way to get around that.
That's
But
the right thing to do.
it is the right thing to do. Absolutely. Um,
But I think if somebody wants that to be passed, they're going to have to do a lot of work up front,
mhm.
a lot of education of a lot of people.
Some of it you never know though. Of course, I'm basing things off of past history because this thing flew through town meeting with better than the majority in agreement when we first adopted um, and allowed the cannabis industry to come on board here on the island. So it wasn't quite two-thirds. I may have been close to two-thirds, but it was definitely well past majority standard for that to kick into place. Don, what do you think?
I mean, I think those are all really good points. And there was so much debate on limiting it to two and
Mhm.
figuring that all out. But I think it's evolving. The culture is evolving, the economics of it are evolving, and the rules are changing to make it more viable.
Mhm.
So I don't really have anything else to add, but I think that all of the points that were made are very valid and things we need to think about. And for this topic, I think that you will see a younger crowd turn out for town meeting if it
Mhm.
comes to that.
I would agree. And don't underestimate too, there's a number of people in the medical side of things that this has helped tremendously as well. And, hopefully they would feel as though that there's an opportunity here to chime in about it. No, those are all good points, Don. I would concur with you across the board on this. Um, just quickly, just from my own perspective, I understand the economic thing, but of course, that may not be something we should be concerned with. I mean, certainly we want people to be successful, but whoever's going to undertake that project as well is going to have to run their own numbers. Maybe our function more is to open the door in a prudent way, such that there's a degree of success that can happen. But like you said, with the way the industry is just going at this point, Joe, they're going to have to be sharp on their analysis for what that means. And you had your hand raised, sir. So go ahead.
I did, and I forgot while you were
Oh,
talking.
sorry. Sorry.
It may come
Um,
back.
That's okay. So, I really don't have much more. I really don't have much more for you. our next meeting is scheduled for December 21st, and I think we'll have a much better feel for where we're at with things and maybe give you a more precise look at what's going to wind up coming up for it and how that's going to proceed ahead.
It did,
Nicole, go ahead.
it did come back, and that is.
Oh, here we go.
We prepared this document for the town folks to review, town administration to review. Would it be worthwhile to go back and look at it based on the months that have transpired to see whether there's some changes we would even recommend? Or should we just let it stand as it is?
I'd probably say if you're good conceptually with most of the things that we've talked about here, I'd say instead of going back into a review process, let's start moving ahead with it, because the changes that were implemented by the Cannabis Control Commission started to really change a lot of things that we talked about in the past. From a historical perspective, you're welcome to look back at it. And certainly if you see anything, please shoot me an email. But I think right now, with all the new changes implemented, we should at least try to establish what the new baselines are that we want to move ahead with. And then let's see what I think the acid test here will be what town council says yay or nay to as well. And I will tell you that the person who we deal with on town council, it's God, I always forget her name. Nicole Costanzo, I think it is. Yeah. She's definitely, again, one of the legal eagles out there who have been championing what's been going on. So we're in good hands, I think, from a town perspective as to what she wants. She's trying to bring forward. She's got her finger way on the pulse of things. Not everyone may agree with her analysis, but again, from our perspective, since she's going to be representing the town, we do need to kind of listen to her and see what she's all going to bring up with. Nothing doesn't mean it can't be challenged. But I just want to give you some assurances too that you've got someone out there who really does understand what's going on with the Cannabis Control Commission and the industry. Dan, Nicole, any closing words? Dan, go ahead.
Text from the can you hear me?
Yeah, got you now.
Yeah, I got the context that I missed. So I believe you were talking about the lifting the number of or changing the number of adult use marijuana retailers on the island. And this is one of the reasons too that, and we talked about it in the last meeting, one of the reasons I sort of slept on things and also wanted to bring things back too, because that I think is going to be a big part of all of these things that we're talking about. And I was speaking with a stakeholder on the island, and after thinking about it a bit too, if we are going to, so I know social consumption might be the next wave, and that might fall under the retail cap. So if we even specify that the license types that will be available, or even just crunching the numbers there, but to your point too, it is a free market, and that is to open that door, I don't think will hurt anybody, and anyone who's going to get operational on the island, myself included, you definitely have to crunch your numbers on that side. So, but yeah. I will just say maybe differentiating as well, and it'll walk not run, right? And I think that's really the maximum of all of the bylaws on the island. But and I appreciate it, and I look forward to next month for sure. But thank you.
Nicole, did you have anything?
Well, I just I haven't joined in a while, so I feel like I missed a lot of stuff. So I'm
That's okay.
Bits and pieces of what you're talking about, but I've definitely missed some things, so I don't understand everything that's going on. Part of it sounds like you guys are talking in code there, but
I'm sorry. We're definitely not trying to. And if we start doing that, you just raise your hand and say, "Hang on, I don't understand where you're heading to." If you want to get together as well, I'm happy to do that.
yes, that something like that might be good just to catch me up.
Yeah, let me just kind of give me a little thought about when and where, and I'm happy to do that with you.
Sure. Thank you, Barry.
I don't want to feel like we're throwing you out there because I know sometimes we all get busy and all of a sudden it's like, what just happened?
Yeah.
So I'm happy I'm happy to do that with any of our vendors out there who are doing this. And I do want to underscore too that the things that we're talking about, the industry has changed, it continues to move forward. But part of especially kind of like when I talk to Libby as well too, I also want to be sensitive to the fact that you've got two industry leaders out there in the cannabis industry who have been really good and gracious toward the island and have put some very solid businesses in place, and we can't just go charging ahead either without kind of doing that review as well too.
That's
So
very nice to say, Barry.
yeah, no, anyways, I'll leave it at that. I will leave it at that, but we'll chat further. Anyways, if there's nothing else before us at this point, thank you for your time. We'll see you in a month's worth of time. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you who celebrate Thanksgiving. And I know there's other holidays coming up too. We'll see you December 21st. Let me just look at something. Is that too close for Christmas for all you guys? I know it's Christmas is that we'd
Monday.
be on Thursday, Christmas is on Monday. Just do me a favor, if you're good with it, fine. If you're thinking we should change the date, just either, I don't know, text me, call me, shoot me an email, shoot me. I don't know. Anyways, thank you everyone. I appreciate it and I'll look forward to talking to you all soon.
Very good.
All right, take care.
Thanks. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Do you need a motion to adjourn?
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, that
So
would be,
moved.
thank you, Dawn. I'm trying to be
Seconded.
respectful of all your time here. So that was your motion, ma'am. It was to adjourn. Did I
Yep.
hear? And Joe Plandowski has got his fingers up seconding it, which is so good of him. So Abby
Aye.
and Dawn,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
I should say no just because I like having you here and keeping you, but I'm going to say aye. Get along with your lives. Thanks very much, everyone.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Aye.